So I've been working on a lot of new low profiles. You know, just you can't have too many, right? So late in the evenings and on the weekends, I'm just constantly working on new profiles to add to the library. Because I mean, people just call all the time and want crazy stuff that we just don't have. And now that we have the ability to uh, make lobes in house, we can meet those demands without a whole bunch of trouble, right? So during all of that, a lot of times I'll share the graphs, the lobe graphs, as we're designing stuff, and families and that kind of stuff. And I noticed because I share a lot of stuff on our Facebook business page, and I noticed a lot of people's like, hey, we just don't know what we're looking at, and some people's like, well, it looks neat or it looks smooth, but we don't. What does all that mean? So when I share a graph like this, um, all of these squiggly lines and curves, they all represent a specific thing, and so I felt like it would be a good idea to just go over this stuff in depth again. I think we have talked about it way back, but we've got so many new subscribers and there's so many new people on our business pages, on social media, that they just don't know about some. They don't, they don't go back and look at them old videos and learn about this stuff. So I figured I'd just do a fresh one, uh, go over some stuff, what's going on, what are we looking at, what does it mean, and hopefully it'll help you, uh, make better decisions or ask better questions when you're ordering cams from anybody, right? It doesn't me or anybody else. So stay tuned, and I got a bunch of graphs and pictures, and I got my crayon box open, and we're gonna do a bunch of math and all of that jazz. So stay tuned. All right. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna go through each derivative in the graph. So each different line, curve, shape, we're gonna call it a derivative. So we're gonna go through each one. We're gonna look at each one individual, and we're gonna talk about what they are, what they ain't, and once we get through all of the derivatives, then we're going to look at some math and talk about how we calculate these derivatives. You hear about, we got lift, we got velocity, we got acceleration, we got jerk, and we're going to talk about. I mean, you can do this at home with a degree wheel and a calculator and a really good indicator. I mean, it's not as accurate as what the software will do, but you can still get a good idea, if that's something that you want to do. So this first graph is, let me get mine pulled up here. So this first deal, it kind of looks like a lobe. So this is a trace of the lift curve. So this is what the lift curve looks like plotted out in crank degrees. Um, a lot of people, and we've done multiple videos and addressed this topic, and it still confuses the whole world. People think this area right here is the ramp. This is not the ramp. The ramp is way down here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna just come over here to where the ramp actually is, and let me get there, and I'm gonna put an arrow dead nuts where the ramp. When we talk about the ramp, we talk about where take up happens. So way right there, all the way down here at what is that, 146 degrees. So, center of the lobe is 0, all the way over here to 146 degrees is where the ramp is. And then to me, and it seems like most people agree, but the ramp, the lifter is coming up but they're still slack in the valve train. So the lifter comes up to wherever so at the lobe, most of my solids, this is a solid, most of my solids are designed for 10 thousandths lash at the lobe. So you would multiply that by the rocker ratio. So if it's a 1.7, your hot lash would be 17. If it's a 1.5, it will be 15, so on and so forth. So this is where the ramp, that's it. Like, that's the ramp. Everything after this is ultimately what we call the main event. So some people, it seems like, up till about 50 lift, they kind of consider that the ramp area, somewhere up around peak velocity, give or take. And I mean, I could probably get down with that. So right there is where, so here's where peak velocity is. So, you've got, I don't know, 25 degrees. There's 25 degrees there, but I don't consider that the ramp. The ramp, to me, the ramp's over at lash. When we take up lash, it's done. Because we set the amount of acceleration and velocity we want to have at that pickup point. And so whatever we have to do to make that transition from the base circle up to that point, to me, is the ramp. That's getting us on to the interstate. And then everything after that on ramp is, we own the interstate now. So having said that, again, this is just a basic plot of the lift. All right. So the next graph, or the next derivative, is going to be velocity. So velocity, and we're going to do the math at the end of all of this, and I'm going to show you how this stuff is calculated. But, we've got degrees and we've got lift. And the rate in which that changes, because from this degree to this degree, just an arbitrary number, from 100 degrees to 101 degrees, the lift changed, let's just say a thousandth. And then from 101 to 102, it changed a thousandths and a half. So the velocity would be half a thousandths. And you can extrapolate that out to every derivative. So you just have to have enough lines to be able to do the math to figure out velocity, acceleration, and jerk. And we're going to do that at the end of this. But so velocity is the rate of change of lift. The next, and probably the most important, pretty close to the most important derivative, is acceleration. And acceleration is exactly what you think it is. So acceleration is the rate of change of velocity. And that's where you can really get in trouble. If a lobe has too much acceleration for your valve train system, your mass, your spring load, that's when the system's going to come unglued, generally. Because, you go, let me think about how to do it right. So you come up to peak acceleration and then you go down. And a lot of times, if you see the graph, so here is peak acceleration, and then down here is peak negative acceleration. So we got peak positive, peak negative. And this transition, which ultimately is jerk, and we'll get to that too, but this transition is where you start getting separation or lofting. Lofting generally happens over the nose, but we're getting close. You see where we at. We're getting close to the nose of the cam. So this is where things start getting upset. And it's kind of like when you go over a hill, you go over a hill really fast in your car, and you get that funky feeling in your stomach, when you go over the hill and the suspension kind of drops out from under the car. Well, that's exactly what happens when the valve train starts to go out of control, when it goes from positive acceleration to negative acceleration. And if that transition isn't smooth and you have a bunch of jerk, then that's when the system's going to unload, and it starts here and then carries on through the rest of the system. And then you just get all kind of freaky stuff happening over the nose, and then it crashes into the closing side, and then it starts bouncing, and then a lot of times you get bounce at the closing, but it's not from the closing side, it's from the opening side, just come unglued, right? So then the next derivative is jerk. And, high acceleration with jerk is what gets you in trouble. And so, there's calculations for all of this stuff to tell you, what's going on, and if it'll work with your system. But there's so many variables that, push rod stiffness, rocker arm stiffness, spring mass, valve weight, spring rate. There's just so many variables. This lobe may be perfect for this application. You just have the wrong valve gear. And then this lobe may be perfect for another application, but it's absolutely horrific for your application because you can't use whatever. You can't get a big enough push rod in it, or the rocker you've got to run is just not very good, or it's stud mounted, or there's just 1,000 variables. So I say all the time, and I mean, they are some bad lobes, but for the most part, there are lobe designs that are good for your application and not good for your application, not necessarily just not good lobe designs. So keep that in mind. And I see a lot of, we talked about this before, kind of. I see people that they'll get they'll pick their own cam lobes out of, especially like Comp, or, whoever, some of the bigger names that's got a published lobe catalog. Comp's lobe catalog is actually pretty doggone good, really. And I've been, this stuff just sneaks up on us, right? I've been trying to come up with a good system to categorize all our lobes. And I hate to say it, or well, I don't hate to say it, Comp has a really good system. I mean, I really like it. There's some things that I don't love about it that I'm going to tweak for my own lobe catalog. But ultimately, the way they have their catalog is it is the best out there. It's the best out there. The only thing that I don't like about Comp's deal, if you call them and say, hey, lobe number, blah, 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 what's the peak acceleration on that lobe? They won't tell you. They won't tell you any derivatives. And I mean, I think that's a problem, because if you're working on, if you got this lobe, I mean, I know it's got a description, but it doesn't, the description just doesn't check all the boxes, right? Sometimes there's some information other than just this description that we need to know. And not giving out that information is a little bit silly to me. I mean, if I know, number one, I mean, I can just measure, and I know what it is, right? But somebody's trying to buy a cam and you won't tell them the information they're asking for. I don't know, man. I think it's silly to me. I mean, what you gonna do with that information? I mean, really, I mean, if I tell you that this lobe that we're looking at right now has got 3 zeros, 3 and a 5 positive acceleration, What are you going to do with that information? I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, it's useful information when you're trying to depict a load for this package. If you understand this stuff, if you don't understand it, it's a moot point anyway. But if you do understand it, then obviously, this is information you want. My perfect example: a guy, dyno shop called me. Hey, we got this motor's big block forward. It's floating the valves. I mean, 6,000, it checks out. And he's like, I want to send you the cam and you tell me what's going on. So I sent the cam and I run it. I'm like, yeah, it's got way too much positive acceleration. Big block forward's got a big old huge heavy valve train. You can't run LS style positive acceleration in a big block forward. It just won't work. I mean, if you're going to turn 5,000, it'll work. But if you're going to try to spin it 65 or 7,000, it ain't going to happen. It just, that system can't handle that much positive acceleration. So I told him, I said, hey, it's just, I mean, the cam's fine. It's just, it's a little fast and it needs to be slowed down. So that is why that information is important, because a lot of people, including me, used to be stuck on major and hydraulic intensity. But the problem is that just don't answer all the questions. It gives you a really good indicator of how fast the lobe is in the low lift areas, up to peak acceleration, but it doesn't give you that number. And the difference between valve float and no valve float is, I mean, sometimes 5 or 6 decimal places, right? I mean, it's a very small margin. I mean, 3 zeros, a 3, and a 3 might do perfectly fine. And 3 zeros, a 3, and a 5 might check out at $6,000, So that's why that stuff's important to know, to me anyway. But I hope that we're going to have a catalog. And again, it's going to be an evolving catalog, but my IT guy, which is really just my best friend, and he works for free, so I work him to death. But he's gonna build like an Excel spreadsheet with all the lobes. We're gonna have all the data, like everything you want to know about the lobe that we can give over without just sending you the lobe file, right? We're gonna have all of that, a lobe number, and all the lobe data, and we're gonna have categories and base circle diameters. This lobe will work this base circle diameter, all that kind of stuff, and have it in a Excel spreadsheet type format, or I'm sure we can email it or print it out in a PDF type. But again, it's going to be constantly evolving as we add new load profiles to the system. So I'm hoping that we can have it. I hope we can have it attached to the website where, I don't know that yet, but I hope we can have it attached to the website where you can just click a button, it'll populate. And as we update it, it's constantly being updated on the website. So we'll get sidetracked here. I apologize. Let's get back to these derivatives. So the last derivative is jerk, and that's just this little squiggly line. And you see it doesn't move much because jerk is, I mean, it's like, Lord, it's so far out there in decimal places. I mean, it's big jerk is still 4 zeros. So, that's, I mean, and that's another deal, your resolution when you're reading this stuff, you've got to have, like the all of this stuff is designed in 8 decimal places. So, it's when you get down to jerk, I mean, you need 8 decimal places to really see, have enough resolution to see what's going on. And so that's another big deal, but it don't take a lot of jerk to upset the system. So you kind of got to be careful with the jerk. And I'm, like everything else in life, I'm learning what we get by with, what we can't get by with. But again, there's going to be some Spintron sessions happening. I hope sooner than later, but we'll keep you abreast on all of that. So, all right, so let's go to, so that's all of the derivatives, and then we put them all together. And when you put them all together, this is what a lobe looks like when you put all the derivatives together. And so now, hopefully, when you see these graphs, it ain't just snake oil. It actually looks like something that makes sense. And you can kind of parse out what's happening. What does all this mean? And another thing that I've noticed, and again, I'm used to my software. Everybody's got their own deal, but everybody's software doesn't have the same scaling as mine. So some software, it'll look really weird to me because, the acceleration is 3 zeros and velocity is 2 zeros, but the acceleration is taller than the velocity on some software. But it doesn't matter because that's just the way it's graphed. I mean, the number's still the number regardless of how it looks. So anyway, so let's get to some math. So hang loose, and I'm gonna get this set up here, and then we're gonna do some whiteboard on it. We're gonna do it on the computer. We're not gonna draw on the whiteboard. But hang loose and let me get all this set up. All right, so I'm gonna put a lift table up here, so you're gonna see crank degrees, and then you're gonna see thousandths of lift, right? So we got crank degrees and lift, and from those two columns, we can extrapolate velocity, acceleration, and jerk from those two. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So, and again, you can do this with a degree wheel and a really good indicator. And you just take your time. And again, it's not going to be 8 decimal place accurate, but you can get a really good picture of what's happening and where it's happening. So this is a lift table of the whole entire lobe that we've been looking at from CamPro. And you'll notice that everything we're fixing to do is skips a degree. So it's like 132, 130, 128. The reason for that is the cam is going half speed. So we have to go every 2 degree increments to be at cam speed to get to get the proper data out of this calculation. So just know moving forward that everything you're going to do it in 2 degree increments on the degree wheel if you do this, right? So this here is the lift table, right? So it's going to take 4 degrees. We need 8. We need 4 readings, 8 degrees of information, but 4 readings to be able to extrapolate out to jerk. So, and I'm not going to, unfortunately, I done recorded this one time and train wrecked it, so I had to start over this section. And so I had all kind of funky animations, and it was nice. And I just heck with it. We're gonna get right down to the dirty. So I'm just gonna put the whole formula at one time on the screen, how we get from one to the other. So let me get all that ready. So with this formula, so basically, we're just gonna take the 4 intervals, 8 degrees, but 4 incrementally, and then you just subtract one from the next one, and then that one from the next one, and then that one from the next one, and you just record the numbers, and that's going to give you, and it'll be on the screen here, and that's going to give you velocity, and then once you have 3 velocity numbers, you can do the same math, and that will equal acceleration. And then when you compile acceleration, then you can just minus one from the other, and that will give us the final answer, which is jerk. And you can do this anywhere on the cam you want to. But keep in mind, generally speaking, somewhere around 25 thousandths lift to 60 thousandths lift, somewhere in that window is where peak acceleration is going to be almost every time. And you'll see peak jerk is going to be roughly in line with peak acceleration most of the time. So, again, if you're trying to look at that stuff, but hopefully the graph made sense. I wish I had a messed up my animation, but it was just too much stuff going on, and I got sidetracked and made a mess. So I just started over. So I realized that was probably a lot of information, but again, people, you know, not complain, but they're, hey, I don't know what that means. Can you, if you're gonna post this stuff, can you explain it? So this is the explainer video, and ultimately, this ain't for everybody, right? But some people want to educate themselves on these topics, and that's a wonderful thing. And I hope that's what we're doing. I hope that's what my channel's doing is educating. Again, I say it all the time. I'm telling you because nobody would tell me, and that is the deal, right? This stuff is tribal knowledge, and it is being lost to time. The people that do this stuff in their sleep are in nursing homes and wheelchairs, and when that stuff is gone, it's gone. And there's just not many people coming behind them, right? I mean, there's only a handful of people in this country doing this stuff, like really doing it. And that's scary to me because at some point, there might not be anybody in this country doing this stuff. I mean, it is what it is. But I want to see the system be perpetuated, right? So anyway, again, I know it's a lot. You might need to watch it 2 or 3 times to get a full handle on it. But leave me comments what you think, and hopefully that made sense and it was educational. We thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.